This is the second part of the video lecture for this week. Previously, we talked about infant and toddler concerns and running and planning programs. Now we'll talk more about preschool programs. So once again, with our census information and being able to survey parents, we know that it typically costs between $9,000 to a little less than $8,000 a year for childcare costs for this age. And in California state, there were over 1 million children under the age of 6 with working parents or a single working mother. In the United States, it's almost 10 million. So we do have, once again, a really big need and a larger need than we did for infant and toddler care at this point. This is an age when some parents might choose to go back to work, or sometimes families who do only have one working parent will choose to put the child in kind of a supplementary education program in order to kind of work on socialization issues. So in this video, we're going to be looking at planning for ages 3 to 6. 3 to 5, kind of the times when children need preschool has now been extended with the new laws with kindergarten. You need to turn 5 by September 1st to be in kindergarten. We're seeing older 5s almost up to age 6 within just kind of preschool age programs. This age is known for their wide range of skills and abilities. In infant and toddlers, we're talking about their rapid amount of growth. Growing from infant all the way to a toddler is a large amount of learning skills. And at this age, they probably have a lot of their gross motor skills, working on some refinement of their fine motor skills, being able to bead better, being able to learn how to cut, things like that. So we know that they have a lot of their skills, and we're just really working on refinement, and then also meeting their needs for movement and activity as well. We also know that they're making larger cognitive jumps, not yet having the ability to think abstractly, but we know that they're making some cognitive leaps as well, and we want to support that within the classroom. So that obviously needs to be a part of our daily running of any program. Once again, everything should be developmentally appropriate. I talked about it in a couple lectures back about I don't really care about the curriculum type that you're choosing. It is 100% your decision when working on a program if you have control over that. Sometimes it will already be done for you. If you're coming from a larger program, curricular choices might be made for you. If you're running your own program in your home or as a small business or even a large to medium business, you can choose the type of curriculum that you want to teach. And I have no kind of preconceived notions about academic programs or project-based programs, play-based programs, anything like that, as long as it's developmentally appropriate. So even if you're running an after-school program that has academic focus to it and you've been given money in order to kind of meet achievement gaps for children who might be in groups that are having difficulties meeting some of their cognitive needs in the classroom and need additional support, that might be a program that you run as an after-school program. So you're obviously probably on somewhat of an academic bent. You still have to be developmentally appropriate, and that is something that we are looking for. It needs to meet where a child is. You're not going to treat a 3-year-old like a 6-year-old. They're not going to treat a 6-year-old like a 2-year-old. It goes different ways. So we always need to make sure that it is developmentally appropriate, and that's why you have to take so many child development classes in order to get a permit, is we need to know that you know what developmentally appropriate means for each age group. And if you don't, you're moving from infants into school age or vice versa, or out of your family home into a school, whatever it is, you know how to find that information and you know how to educate yourself on the programs that you're going to be running. Coming out of infant toddler, when I had been doing that for a couple of years, it was kind of a shock to my system when I now had in a school age program that I was going to be running. So we were then 0 to 10 to 12 years old, and I had been 0 to 3 for quite a while, had known and had worked with older age groups. They definitely kind of had to go back to my books and relearn what it meant to have a preschool classroom or to oversee a classroom and then a school age program as well. In this age group, so this kind of 3 to 5, we're looking at the block area, the art area, dramatic play or pretend play, math and science, which is now kind of being called STEM. It's something that a lot of parents seem to understand. And then reading, writing, and print in a center and then all over the classroom as well. And then a place for circle time activities and then also for large group activities as well. This also should include an outdoor space as well as indoor space. Once again, we have staffing changes depending on which kind of program you are, which staffing you need to follow and you should know. And if you don't know, or you're confused about what your program has or your staffing ratios, once again, please talk to me by email or talk to your boss, the program director, your site supervisor, anything like this, because it does change once again. And depending on the program that you are following, you need to be following these staffing requirements because licensing needs to know and will know what they are and will be expecting you to be held. So supervision of toileting and transition times are a huge licensing concern, and that is the main way that we get hit by licensing. So this is where training staff really comes into play. I have been hit in a preschool classroom. My staff members got hit in toileting. They were standing so that they could supervise both the toileting area and the eating area that were, there was a large tiled area, and then it went into the bathroom and she was standing in between, and the licensing analyst did not feel that she had adequate supervision of the toilet area at that time, and that was what we got hit on. So what can we do to make sure that these toileting areas, and then the transition from inside to outside, outside from inside, one classroom to another, if you go into a multi-purpose room, you're leaving the center, you're going on a walk, those are times when children have been left in the classroom, left on the playground, and vice versa, and making sure that you have your counts before you ever leave an area or before you come inside and you leave an area unsupervised. I've seen that happen as well. So how do we kind of train staff? I think first of all, knowing the space that you're in infant and toddlers, we talked about program planning, were kind of inconvenient or difficult spaces, and a personal experience where we had to move and change the environment as much as we possibly could, and it took a lot of trial and error. So knowing what the space is, not one size fits all. Maybe your infant room flows really well, but your preschool classrooms are kind of in unusually shaped classrooms, or they're farther away from the playground than you would want them to be. There's something like that. Working with the staff as well, what are your challenges? Like on the playground, is it easy, but in the classroom, it's really hard. If you're only one teacher with 12 children, it's really difficult for you to take a look at what's going on in the bathroom. You feel like you're constantly standing at the bathroom and you're not getting to be engaged with the children on the floor, something like that. So getting the feedback from the staff members, and then coming up with the policy, and maybe having to change your policy or keep your policy the same, but having to change your procedures and rules, and writing it down and having staff sign that they've read it whenever you've changed it. And then I post it as well, maybe not super conspicuously, but it is somewhere so that if you had a new staff or you had a float or you had to contract with a sub that day, everybody knows what your licensing ratios are. Are you Title V or Title 22? And then how has it changed recently because of changes? Or if you have the inclusion, I had some supervision challenges one time when I had a nonverbal autistic child who ran from the classroom, and so we ended up needing to kind of get an aide or somebody. We were able in the Marine Corps to kind of get some additional help for that child, and eventually we found another site which was easier to kind of lock down for him when he would be kind of a flight risk. But we were working with that family, we were working with the staff that was working on this supervision challenge. But whenever I have to make a change to my policy, my procedures or rules, I write it down, I talk with staff through it, I have them sign it, and then I post it so that we know that there is a change. So if bathrooms are hard to supervise, and that's something that we hear quite consistently, and then transitions are as well, hearing from your staff and then going through those scenarios and hearing what it is, what would you like, where would you like them to stand, how would you like them to use their mirrors, is really going to help you guys be able to make a proactive plan when it comes to supervision. This is another part that I always train staff on. So this is from Better Kid Care. It's a kind of series on YouTube. And it's called Supervision, What's the Count? And I really like it. It's real life situations, as you can see in a real life preschool, and the challenges of supervising children. I am going to say I feel like this is from Minnesota, Wisconsin, somewhere back east. They do have different ratios than we have out here in California. So one caveat to tell your staff members, this is a different center in a different state. Supervision ratios will change, but the basic idea of doing counts is great in this video, and it shows it very hands-on, and so I do like to show my staff. So part of your written weekly assignment for this week is a daily schedule. I know that you guys would have done this before, but typically the job of a director is looking at the daily schedules of quite a few classrooms, especially if you are sharing an outdoor space, a playground, a studio space, a multi-purpose room, an indoor gymnasium, something like that. So making sure that all of the schedules mesh together, that you don't have too many children out on the playground, like probably not all of your preschool classrooms can go out to the playground at the same time. You might be over ratio or over capacity for that space. Or if the playground is right by the toddler classroom, not going at 1 o'clock when they're all going to be asleep and they're banging on the windows and they're waking the toddlers up. You're going to have specific concerns when it comes to space planning and to daily schedules. So while you might be really experienced at writing a daily schedule, maybe not the idea of looking at them at a whole. So I can't really give you a real life application of that. So I am just for this week, for the weekly assignment, as part of the weekly assignment, you're going to be writing out a daily schedule for an infant classroom as well. In addition to that, you're also telling me how many children are in the room and how many teachers or aides will be on duty, and you will decide if you want to follow Title V or Title 22. If you want, you can do a different ratio than you're currently using. So if you're Title V, you could go by Title 22. If you're currently in a center that uses Title 22, you might want to use Title V instead, in order to get a sense of, if I have all of these classrooms, I have all of these children, I have all these playground needs or needs when they need to be in and out of the playground, and I have staffing needs, how do I coordinate all of that to make sure that I am adequately staffed for supervision, for giving my teachers breaks, and for having the children be inside or outside when they need to. So there are a lot of moving parts. In order to kind of give you an example of that, I'm having you come up with a daily schedule for the children that allows for a wide variety of experiences. It's just one classroom. When are they inside? When are they outside? When do they eat? When do they not eat? And then you're also going to tell me, you're just going to make it up out of the blue based on your own experience right now or things that you've done in the past. How many children are going to be in the room? You're going to make that up yourself. And you're also going to do how many teachers or aides will be on duty, depending on which Title 5 or 22 you're going to following. So that is part of your weekly assignment this week. So when we're also looking at space planning and environment, we have to plan for multiple classrooms, we have to plan for staff, and we also need to include indoor and outdoor space. The environment needs to be somewhat flexible, and it also needs to include environments for routines, so hand washing, going to the bathroom, fresh water, things like that, and also learning centers as well. Outdoor space, this is typically the thorn in the side of a lot of programs, because of supervision. Once again, transitioning to the outside and inside space, if it's not right off of your classroom, or even if it is right off of your classroom, not allowing your teachers to be complacent in how they supervise it, or never leaving children out or unsupervised. Teachers often fail to plan for the outside and for the challenging behaviors that are going to emerge if a child feels bored or they're not allowed enough space or time to work on those big movements that they really need to do as far as gross motor development. So making sure that on your lesson plan you have a space for outdoor exploration and gross motor activities. And when I was supervising and as a site supervisor, this is the area that I would check on, because I would find that there would just be like pillar and shaping go. And then it either wouldn't never happen outside, or that's something that children have been doing for so long that they'd get really bored. So when I was doing kind of lesson planning, I would often make sure that the outdoor experiences were linked to indoor experiences or vice versa, and then that they were actually being done in the classroom. And if they weren't, you know, why is there not an activity out here? And if there is, you know, why did you choose this particular one? So being conscious and thoughtful and planning for outdoor just as much as indoor as well. And then positioning of staff, I've had some really wonky shaped playgrounds and outdoor spaces that I've had to work with, just because that's an area where, you know, you don't get a lot of control over. So alcoves and point, you know, it's like a triangular trapezoid shape and children can go off to the side. This is something that I hear from elementary school teachers all the time, is that kind of space planning outside. There's areas where they can go behind schools, and supervision really becomes an issue, and it's typically down to the positioning of staff. For the most part, your experienced staff might understand these and hopefully make plans for it. If not, I have had to intervene as a supervisor and literally position the staff myself on a rotating basis until they understood that somebody needs to be in this quadrant, somebody needs to be in that quadrant, somebody needs to be in this quadrant and the other quadrant as well, to prevent clumping and talking and chatting. And also because, you know, maybe in quadrant 1, there's an alcove there, and if you're not standing on that side of the playground, you won't see what the children are doing in this alcove. Or in quadrant B, there's a sandbox, and it's always getting onto our grass and onto our pavement, and it's creating fall hazards. There needs to be a teacher there to supervise sweeping and things like that. So I have to do that occasionally to make sure that people understand that there are different parts of a playground space that might need different parts of supervision, but eventually kind of allowing your staff to have some degree of autonomy over that and control over that if they are showing that they are responsible, forward-thinking caregivers, having mentor staff or more experienced staff who can take on those types of roles, but knowing that you might always have to step in and have situations like this as well, where you kind of have to rein everybody back and make sure that those basics of supervision are really taken care of. So health, once again, very similar with our infant and toddler program, hand washing procedures that are followed and posted for staff and parents, picture-based as much as possible for our children and posted at eye level, and then making sure that the children are actually doing it. This is something that the YMCA, QPI, a lot of the governmental agencies that are looking at us are looking for hand washing. How many seconds is it? How are the children washing their hands? Are they getting, you know, are they doing all of the things that they're supposed to do? And honestly, it is the biggest way to keep the classrooms clean and cut down on that cross-contamination. I think I read a study that when there is like infectious diarrhea in the classroom, proper hand washing at all the times that it's supposed to be doing cuts your rate of getting it down by like 40%. So you have a 50%, almost a 50% chance of not getting it yourself if you're washing your hands a lot and you're making the children wash their hands. And we know that vomiting and diarrhea will run through a center like crazy. So just remember that for yourself. I do like the YMCA wellness program that they have. So you do get priority placement and referrals for your center, and you also get tools from them as well, for like promoting health with children and families and things like that. And it also helps improve classroom health practices. So you have to do a couple of things, but when there's that YMCA referral program, you get a priority placement if you've taken care of this program. It's a fantastic program. If you're not doing it, please check it out on Google and sign up for it. It will help you for your referrals, and it'll make sure that your classrooms are really healthy, and parents really, really appreciate that, and they appreciate the tools that you can kind of get through YMCA to support them. Accident and incident reports. We're going to talk a lot more about incident reports later on in the class, and licensing wise, what you have to do with an incident report, like if somebody breaks their leg or their arm or there's child abuse or something like that. But there needs to be accident reports, and there needs to be good quality accident reports on a constant basis. I fall into the camp of any little thing that a parent might notice will become an accident report. And I know that there are those parents that roll their eyes. Again, I know he's 3. 3-year-olds want themselves. And I'm the same way. I get to my daughter's school and I'm just signing and giving it back to them. No, I don't want to copy. Like, I know she's got a gigantic head and she's 2 years old, and 2-year-olds fall victim to gravity storms all of the time. Like, I totally understand that as a parent. I don't want a copy of it at all. But I do appreciate that they do it, and I'll tell you the story why, as a supervisor, I'm kind of crazy about accident reports, is because I had my accident reports in a legal deposition type case. So there was a nasty divorce. There were 2 sets of parents. Both of them were being CPS involved. They were complaining and sicking CPS on themselves. It eventually went to court in this divorce proceedings and CPS and all. It became like a nightmare, really. my accident reports were pulled into this kind of legal thing because they needed to establish when this child had been specifically hit. So they were looking at all my accident reports. On this day, this was at school. On this day, it was an unknown cause. On this day, it was when mom had him. On this day, it was when dad had him. Over like a 3-month period, my accident reports were to establish when there had been these photographs, bumps, and bruises. Was it something that I knew that had happened at school? So that really saved my butt, and it allowed me to not get involved in this divorce case and these CPS things. I was just providing the most excellent care I could for this child that kind of was in an unfortunate situation. And because I had done my due diligence and I had fantastic accident reports, I could literally just make copies and give them to the lawyers, and they could hash it out, and I could just focus on the child. So I am very much into accident reports and making them overkill. If it is something noticeable, please write an accident report, and please instruct your staff members on how to write accident reports as well. As far as using good grammar and spelling, I always signed off on them as a supervisor, or somebody in management had to sign off on them, because sometimes they're not written correctly, or sometimes the wording's a little funny, or maybe it seems like you weren't paying attention, and then when I asked, you were paying attention, but you just kind of wrote it funky in that moment, and so I'll rewrite it and I'll sign it and make sure that it goes out well. It's really nice when you have office staff like an admin assistant or an assistant director who can also take over that for you as well and make sure that those things are really written well. Once again, because I had that personal experience of having to go to lawyers and people that were not involved in our industry having to read it. You might not go as over the top as I do, but I just like to bring in why I do it. I do think you should have a policy in place about when the parent is contacted or not. That is quite specific, so that parents are always being contacted if there is blood or it's going to be a bruise, but they're not contacted if it's just a bump or a scrape, something. If that's your own decision, but I think everybody knowing, staff and front office staff as well, understanding when parents should be contacted and when they should not. Even if it's overkill, at least everybody knows it. And then information about when the parent should be contacted, who contacted that parent, especially if it's a staff member. At the time the parent was contacted, did you leave a message, but you'd really like to talk to them? Or are you going to have to call back? Things like that as well. Then we also, as part of our safety, have safety checklists, which I will have an example up on Canvas for you. Disaster preparedness as well, which will is a huge issue, I think, especially after all the wildfires that we had in Northern California, and then us as well. You know, I was teaching in the 03 and in the 07. I was teaching in 03, and then in those 07 fire, 05 as well. Yes, 05 as well, and then 07 we had those really nasty ones, and I was in between jobs as a state supervisor. So I remember some of the panic of, and then being shut down for like a week, 3 days to 5 days, I believe, in those types of fires. So it has been things that we've affected. And then how do you handle disaster preparedness? I remember on Camp Pendleton being shut down very early by the military police because we were having a fire that was nearby, but the MPs are really, really great in like, they don't want to have to evacuate a bunch of infants from a center like that. Like if they can have the parents come pick up, that's where the MPs are always going to fall. So they just were like, shut down, get all these kids out of here. Except for one. So I spent 6 hours in a classroom in the front office with another staff member who stayed with me for one child. Mom was deployed out, well, she was on orders out in the desert and could not get back because she was literally in the desert shooting guns. And then dad was in the Navy, and he was literally ignoring our phone calls. It rang for a while, hung up, let it go again, and then he turned his phone off. Found out later, he thought that he had made the personal call, that he knew where the fire was and that we were not in any danger, and he did not want to pick up his child. Very serious conversation with the family the following week about that not being their call. And no, we weren't in danger, but we were following the military police's procedures, which trump everybody basically on base when you were a Marine or in the Navy. And then also just kind of, we had some iffy situations with people, especially in the military, getting orders. So the person that you had as your emergency contact now lives in Florida or now lives in North Carolina. what are you going to do? So we definitely made some changes with disaster preparedness in our emergency cards and how often we were going to have them updated. We decided on quarterly. The parents could look at it and sign every quarter that it was the same and then redo it every year. But we did try to get in there quite a bit just because the military changed so much. Maybe you work with a family or community that does change a lot as well, and you would like to make sure that those phone numbers and parents are as current as possible. And then another thing is, when do you do fire drills? Unfortunately, active shooters is also something that we practice. And then our evacuation and disaster preparedness drills as well, having enough food, having enough water. How do you do it in preschool? How do you do it with the little ones who that might be really scary for? But also making sure that they understand what the procedures are. Do you allow parents to be part of it? There's a lot of kind of ideas that you have to think about when it comes to fire drills, and this is part of being a supervisor, is the detail and the minutia, but how do you want to do it? Because you know, you have this vision, and this vision percolates all the way down to even something as simple as a fire drill. Who tells you when to do it? But how do you do it with really young children without scaring them, but making sure that they're safe? Another thing that I wanted to talk about was technology to children. What is it in your classroom? How do you do it? How is it intentional? How is it planned for, and not just something that you allow it? I think we're in a really great position to educate families that are now, I think, children that are in elementary school spend up to 9 hours a day in some kind of screen time. And then I think we as adults, no, I think they spend 8 hours, we spend 9 to 10 hours. So we spend a lot of time. So we might not be the best models as parents and families, but in schools, we don't typically have unlimited screen time. And if we do, licensing should probably be involved if you're letting kids just play on iPads and watch movies all day. But you might have a desktop in your classroom, or a few of them, or you use iPads within the classroom to extend learning as well. So I think that we do have a great position of being able to advocate for technology and the importance of it, and how we can model it nicely and integrate it in an intentional way within the classroom. But how are we really doing this? The one source that I found is at Harvard. This guy is called the Mediatrician, and it's the Center for Media Studies, and he has some great ways, like parents will ask questions and he'll answer them. They have policy papers based on research. So if you are looking to expand technology, or you're doing technology already and you're not really sure if you kind of like the direction that your program is going, check out, once again, Harvard's Center for Media Studies, and his name is kind of the Mediatrician. That's what he calls himself, like a pediatrician, but Mediatrician. And it's a kind of a fantastic group. But what do we recommend to parents? Things are changing, social media is changing. So specifically with children, how do we include technology in the classroom? Because it kind of starts about this age that will allow it to be in our classroom in a limited and intentional way. So in conclusion, we're providing for quality programs that encompass many different areas of our classroom: supervision, assessment, training, health, safety, routine, and developmentally appropriate practice. So we have a lot of different things that we need to look at on a daily basis all over our programs, but making sure that we have planned well for our infant and toddler and then our preschool programs is really, really important, that we consider what is going on in our classroom, how we can supervise the children, and how we can make the best space, train our staff in the best way in order to have these fantastic educational experiences for the little preschoolers in our lives. All right, that's it for this week's lecture. Have a great week.